Good day, I'm Dee-Anne, the group leader of the project, and I trust that you are doing well in these unpredictable times. I'd just like to inform you of how our project has been laid out. I asked each one of my group members to send me a slide as well as a Word document as to what they would like me to say about their slide, and I put the documentation together, the PowerPoint presentation together, and I voiced over everything that I was told to do for everybody's slide throughout the project. I also proofread everything, and I looked at the referencing that each one of my group members sent to me, and everything seems to be fine. So thank you for taking your time to have a look at our project. To understand the background of the lack of access to basic services, one first needs to understand what exactly basic services are. Universal basic services are a form of social security in which all citizens or residents of a community or region or even a country receive unconditional access to a range of free basic public services funded by taxes and provided by a government or public institution. This includes housing, education, healthcare, social welfare, transport, electricity, energy, water, sanitation, as well as waste removal. Let us have a look at the background and what happens as to why South Africa has a lack of access to basic services. The main issue in South Africa when it comes to basic services is the extreme poverty. South Africa has a ton of informal settlements and is near impossible to get water, electricity, and food to all of these places. Those people cannot afford to go to school, so they never get educated, which leads them to never getting a job, followed by them always being poor and their children growing up poor. So they never get out of this vicious cycle of poverty, which leads to the lack of basic services. The other big issue is that crime in South Africa is a big, serious problem. The electric cables get stolen on a daily basis, which affects the basic service of electricity. Taxis are constantly on strike, so there is limited public transport. Education, institutions, and public buildings get burned down, so that affects the basic services of education. The third issue is extreme corruption ruling our beautiful country. A lot of taxpayer money gets embezzled and pocketed by corrupt leaders. The money being stolen is meant for the government institutions such as the public hospitals. These hospitals are greatly underfunded, which leads to a lack of staff and equipment. This means that the amount of people that can be helped is significantly lower than what it should be. So that negatively affects the basic service of healthcare in South Africa. This is why we have such a problem with the lack of basic services in South Africa. Basic services in South Africa can include energy and electricity, refuse and waste removal, as well as water and sanitation. These services are critical to improve the lives of South African citizens. Let's start off by talking about the lack of basic services and how they can impact the young learner. The lack of basic services can have a negative impact on the young learner's life. If there is no proper water and sanitation available, waste is not removed sufficiently, and due to poverty, nutritious food is not available. Young learners often live in dangerous situations due to insufficient service delivery. For example, crime rates are high, which places learners and the community's lives at risk. Broken toilets can pose as a hazard, as young learners can fall into them and drown. They are often limited to no transportation available for these young learners, and this can be dangerous as students will have to walk to school and back home. Teachers are not always qualified and therefore cannot provide learners with quality education. Due to poverty, some young learners might have to work to help their parents with an additional income. This will have a negative impact on their education as they will not be able to attend school. Secondly, let's have a look at the barriers to learning. Poverty is one of the foremost barriers to learning and thus impacting students negatively. This intervenes in the students' ability to learn, their health and well-being. Violence, abuse and neglect can force numerous students to stop attending school or result in bad marks. Socioeconomic status prohibits equal access to school as well as to their level of mobility. The lack of school infrastructure will have a negative impact and high absenteeism of both teachers and learners. Due to the lack of access to health care amongst vulnerable adults and young children, it often results in child-headed households. Nutrition in schools are frequently limited due to the lack of food resources and parents not being able to practice healthy eating habits. Literacy is the stepping stone for every child to ensure a better future and to create a better income for themselves when they move out of the house. Finally, the impact on the learner's participation during class. Due to a number of factors as mentioned, the school will have high non-attendance rate. Students will not be able to participate in class constantly and learn on a daily basis. Due to poverty, students have a lack of nutrition in their body, which will result in low concentration in class. This will lead to a low grades as students will not be able to focus and learn. Young learners are often exposed to crime and violence and may adapt aggressive behavior. These distractive students can cause fights in the classroom and might easily become frustrated. Learners will have low education standards as they do not have qualified teachers to teach them and therefore will not be able to grasp concepts correctly. Classrooms in rural areas are often overpopulated. This will result in a teacher not being able to give students the adequate attention and can cause learners to fall behind and not participate in class. The doors of learning shall be open to all. Teachers are the most critical players. The success or failure of education and the standard of a school cannot be accomplished without the efforts of the learner. Teachers must take care not to mark learners who are marked for additional assistance due to lack of service, thus beginning to encourage extraordinary practices which will not improve the learner performance. It would be very important that teachers promote inclusivity in the classroom on a daily basis. The learner profile document will act primarily as a guide for teachers to prepare and endorse interventions. The regular basis for all learners as part of the teaching and learning process. Help would involve the differentiation of content, the modification of the curriculum and the classroom and atmosphere of the classroom, as well as the implementation of the required accommodations for evaluation and review. To meet the needs of all learners, a shift in attitudes, behavior, teaching methods, curriculum, and environments is needed. The core goals of screening, identification, and assessment are to increase the involvement of all learners on the culture and curriculum of schools, and to uncover and minimize barriers to learning. With regards to water, the resources available in the community would be different in terms of the lack of access to basic services in an urban settlement and a township, as these are mostly areas that are always affected the most. For instance, water shortage or no access to water at all, which is a basic service. Regarding urban settlements, in most urban settlements, they are always closer to a river, so they would go and collect water from it in order to be able to drink, cook, eat, clean, and so forth with that water. With regards to townships, most townships are much more developed areas compared to urban areas. In townships, there are local taps that are available for the community to use. Sometimes the water availability of these taps may be timed. For instance, the water would be available from 4 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon and then would be cut off after that until the next day at 4 in the morning. These people are able to use the water for cooking, drinking, washing, cleaning, and so forth. As years are going by, people are being introduced to using JoJo tanks. JoJo tanks offer the ideal solution to reduce your municipal water consumption. Although they are quite pricey, but sometimes you may see 2 or 3 within an area. They are sometimes far apart, but they are always in walking distance, and people go to them with buckets to collect the water for their daily use. With regards to electricity, some developed townships do have some sort of access to electricity, which is mostly timed and sometimes may not be available. Today, many urban settlements still do not have access to electricity at all. Both these areas can get solar panels. A panel designed to absorb the sun's rays as a source of energy for generating electricity or heating. Some still prefer using fires as a way of cooking and heating. But what they do not realize is that the smoke coming from the fire is not good for the climate. So solar panels will not only benefit them, but will also benefit the community in which they live in. One can probably suggest that they can use a fire on the days where there's a lot of rain and the solar panels have exhausted. With regards to sanitation, in many areas, the resource that is available in place of flushable toilets are long drops. These are very unhygienic and unsafe for young children. With regards to health, a local clinic may be situated in the area, but sometimes is very far away, which are sometimes also very dangerous to get to. Mobile clinics are customized vehicles that travel to the heart of communities, both urban and rural, and provide preventative and healthcare services where people work, live, and play. They overcome barriers of time, money, trust, and provide the community tailored care to vulnerable populations. Having a mobile clinic at least 4 times a month assists the community with getting medical checkups. With regards to education, there are a lot of teachers from the suburbs who offer up their free time on weekends for extra tuition. There are mobile libraries that can come to the areas. A bookmobile or mobile library is a vehicle designed for use as a library. Bookmobile services and materials such as internet access, large print books, and audiobooks may be customized for the locations and populations served.